My name is Sarah Ahmed. I'm 32 years old. 3 months ago, I flew 14 hours from Dubai to Lahore to attend my younger sister's wedding. When I finally arrived at the venue, my own father stopped me at the gate and said, in a flat, tired voice, "You don't need to go inside." I stood there frozen, wearing the outfit I had specially designed and stitched 2 months earlier, holding a gift I had wrapped carefully the night before on a hotel bed, my hands still smelling faintly of the ribbon glue. I watched my father's face. There was no hesitation in it, no guilt, nothing. Just a door quietly closing on me. 3 days later, my phone rang. It wasn't an apology. It was a bill, $52,000. And what I said back on that call, nobody in my family expected, not then, not ever. Before I tell you what happened next, if this story keeps you watching till the end, drop a comment below saying either boundary or sacrifice, depending on what you think you would have done in my place. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, you are going to feel every second of this story. Let's go back to where it all began. It was a Tuesday evening last November, and I was sitting in my small apartment in Dubai, half watching a rerun with a cup of tea going cold beside me, when my phone lit up with a video call from my younger sister, Fiza. She's 26, fresh out of a management program, still living close to our parents back in Lahore. I picked up, and her face filled the screen, glowing, practically vibrating with excitement. "I'm engaged," she squealed, holding her hand up to the camera so I could see the ring catch the light. "Bilal proposed last night. It was perfect, Sarah, absolutely perfect." I felt real, uncomplicated happiness rise in my chest, the kind you only feel for people you've known since they were babies. "Fiza, that's incredible. I'm so happy for you." She told me about Bilal, how his family owned one of the city's largest construction and real estate groups, how his parents were already talking about hosting the wedding at their private farmhouse, how everyone on his side was thrilled. In the background, I could hear our mother's voice, and then she leaned into frame. "Hi, Beta," she said to me, smiling, but it didn't quite reach her eyes the way a mother's smile should. "Exciting news, no? It really is," I said. "I'll start looking at flights. When's the date?" There was a small pause, barely a second, but I felt it. My mother glanced sideways at Fiza before answering. "Don't rush into buying tickets. We haven't even fixed anything yet. It'll probably be a small function anyway. Amy, it's Fiza's wedding. Of course I'm coming." "Well, we'll see how things go," she said, and then she was gone from the screen, leaving Fiza to talk about flower arrangements and color palettes for another 15 minutes. I smiled and nodded, and took mental notes, but something sat uneasy in my stomach the whole time, like a stone I couldn't quite swallow. That was the first time in almost 2 years I had a real reason to go home. I should have paid closer attention to how hard my mother was working to talk me out of it. 2 weeks after that call, it was my mother who rang me again, not Fiza. And I already had a feeling about what this call would be about before I even picked up. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something practical," she began, her voice businesslike now, none of the earlier warmth. "The venue people are asking for a card on file to lock in the booking. Your father's credit isn't great right now, you know, after the loan for the shop. And Fiza doesn't have any credit history at all. She's never even had her own card." I already knew exactly where this conversation was going. "The caterer wants the same thing," she continued, "and so does the decorator and the photography team. 4 vendors total. We just need someone with a good financial standing to sign the paperwork. You'd be helping your sister so much, Sarah." "How much money are we talking about, Amy?" "The total comes to around 52,000, but you'd only need to put down a small deposit now, maybe 2,500. The rest gets billed after the event is over. $52,000, sitting under my name." "Amy, that's a huge amount. It's not your money, Beta, it's just your name on some papers." "We will handle everything on our end, I promise you that." I had heard that particular promise before. When I was 23, I co-signed a loan for my father's shop expansion, and it took me almost 3 years to clean that off my credit file. When I was 27, I wired money home for what I was told was an emergency roof repair, and later found out half of it went toward Fiza's tuition fees. But this was my little sister's wedding, and I was the elder daughter, the one with the stable overseas job, the steady salary, the one who was always expected to handle things. "Fine," I said. "Send me the contracts." I told myself, the way I always did, that this is simply what family does for each other. I signed every single document that week without reading the fine print twice, trusting, the way I always trusted, that it would somehow be fine. Over the following 3 months, the wedding took real shape, and I watched almost all of it happen from the outside, through a screen, like a stranger scrolling through someone else's life. Fiza created a group chat for the wedding party and called it Bride Squad. I was never added to it. I only found out it existed when a mutual friend accidentally forwarded me a message meant for that group, a set of photos showing bridesmaid dress options with the caption, "Vote, girls." I wasn't one of the girls apparently. I called Fiza twice over those months, once to ask about the seating plan, once to offer to help pick the Mendy songs, something we used to bond over as kids. The first time, she said she'd call me back and never did. The second time, the call went straight to voicemail, and an hour later a text arrived. "So busy with planning Arn, talk soon." I called my mother separately to ask if there was anything I could help organize from Dubai. "Everything's under control. You don't need to worry about anything," she said. In that same tone people use when they're trying to close a conversation, not continue one. I never received a formal invitation. Not a printed card. Not even a digital one on WhatsApp like everyone else seemed to be getting. I told myself that was normal, that sisters don't need formal invitations, that I was automatically included because I was family. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Fiza posted a carousel from the Mendy function on Instagram, her in yellow, surrounded by cousins and friends, our mother beaming in the background. The caption read, "Surrounded by everyone who matters to me." I wasn't in a single frame. I stared at that post for 11 full minutes. I counted, because counting felt like the only thing keeping me from calling and demanding an answer. I almost called anyway, almost asked why I hadn't even been told the Mendy was happening. But I talked myself out of it. The way I always did. Maybe the Mendy was only for close friends. Maybe they assumed I couldn't make it early enough. Maybe, I told myself for the 100th time, I was simply overthinking things. I requested a full week off work for the trip. I only get 12 paid leave days a year in my job, and I was about to spend 5 of them on this one trip. My round-trip flight from Dubai to Lahore cost $980. The hotel, 3 nights at one of the better places in the city, came to $420. Fiza's wedding gift, a delicate gold jewelry set she had mentioned wanting during a random phone call months earlier, cost me $650. Altogether, before I had even landed on Pakistani soil, I was out $2,050 of my own money. On the flight, somewhere over the Arabian Sea, I opened the Notes app on my phone and started drafting a small speech. Nothing too long, maybe 2 minutes at most. I wanted to tell the story of how Fiza used to make me play wedding with her as kids, always assigning me the role of the officiant, never letting me be the bride, and how we used to laugh about it for years afterward. I practiced it quietly under my breath twice, my scarf pulled up so the man sitting beside me wouldn't think I had completely lost my mind. When I landed and texted my mother, landed safely, so excited, there was no reply for nearly 2 hours. Then, just as I was checking into my hotel room, a message came through. "Okay, see you tomorrow." 5 words. No exclamation mark. No safe travels. No, "We can't wait to see you." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and stared at those 5 words for a long time before I finally put the phone down, hung up my outfit in the closet, set the wrapped gift on the desk, and told myself everything would feel different tomorrow, once I actually saw my family in person. The next afternoon, I arrived at the venue in my full outfit, the gift box balanced carefully in both hands, my heart pounding with a strange mix of nerves and hope. I spotted my father first, standing near the entrance in a rented sherwani that didn't quite fit his shoulders, shaking hands with an older man I didn't recognize, probably someone from Bilal's side. When he looked up and saw me, his expression changed instantly. The polite smile dropped, his eyes widened, then narrowed, then dropped to his own shoes. He didn't wave. He didn't walk toward me. He simply turned and disappeared inside. I kept walking anyway, telling myself there had to be some explanation. 15 steps from the entrance. 10, 5. The doors opened from the inside, and my mother stepped out to meet me. She wore a beautifully embroidered outfit, her hair and makeup done perfectly for the occasion, but her jaw was set like stone. Her hands clasped tightly in front of her body, not in welcome but like a barricade. "Sarah," she said, her voice low and controlled. "Hi, Amy. I made it," I said, trying to smile. She didn't hug me. She didn't step aside to let me pass. "You need to go," she said quietly. "What?" "I just flew 14 hours to be here. Lower your voice. People are watching," she hissed, her eyes flicking to the guests walking past us. "Amy, I'm your daughter." She stepped even closer. Close enough that I could smell her familiar perfume, the same one she'd worn my entire life. And her voice dropped to a whisper sharper than any shout. "Only family is allowed inside today. You weren't invited." I stood there completely still, the gift box suddenly feeling impossibly heavy in my hands, as a well-dressed older couple walked past us and smiled politely. My mother smiled back at them instantly, then let the smile fall the second they were out of earshot. That's when a warm, confident voice called out from just inside the doorway. "Everything all right out here?" And that voice, I would learn seconds later, belonged to Billow's mother, the woman who had apparently been told, for months, that my parents had only one daughter. Truth Billow's mother stepped through the doorway in an elegant outfit, tall, composed, clearly a woman who was used to running large events and never being caught off guard. She looked at me directly and smiled, open and expectant, clearly waiting to be introduced. My own mother's entire posture shifted in an instant, her voice suddenly turning honey-sweet. "Oh, it's nothing. Just a distant relative who got a little confused about the timing. These big events can be so hectic," she said, laughing lightly. Billow's mother studied my face for a moment longer than necessary. "I thought you only had one daughter?" she asked, still smiling, but with a small edge of genuine confusion now creeping into her voice. The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds. It felt like 20. My mother laughed again, brighter and more brittle this time. "Yes, just the one. This is actually a cousin visiting from out of town. She's a bit mixed up about the schedule." Billow's mother nodded slowly, glanced at me once more with a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, then gently touched my mother's arm. "Well, the ceremony's about to begin. We should head back in." And with that, she disappeared back through the doors, leaving me standing alone with my mother in the exact spot she wanted me erased from. I looked at her. She looked at me. There was no guilt in her eyes, no shame, no flicker of "I'm sorry." I had no choice. Just fear, the kind of raw, cornered fear that comes when a lie you've been maintaining for months is about to collapse in front of you. "A cousin," I repeated quietly. "Sarah, please, don't make this difficult. You told them I don't exist. How long have you been telling people that?" She didn't answer. She just glanced toward the parking lot, silently willing me to disappear on my own. And that's when I finally understood this wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a scheduling mix-up. She hadn't forgotten to invite me. She had erased me carefully and deliberately for months, maybe longer. Every muscle in my body wanted to push past her, walk straight into that hall, and announce to every single guest exactly who I was and exactly how much of that celebration I had personally paid for. I didn't. Instead, I crouched down and gently placed the gift box on the stone step, as though it still mattered. "Please give this to Fiza," I said quietly, and turned around, walking back down the path, past the flowers, past the guests still arriving in 2s and 3s, laughing about the weather, completely unaware of what had just happened a few feet away from them. I got into my rental car, closed the door, and cried, not loudly, but the quiet kind of crying, where your whole chest shakes, but your mouth stays shut. Because even sitting alone in a parking lot, you've spent your whole life being trained never to make a scene. That night, back in my hotel room, still in my outfit, with my makeup smudged, I opened my laptop out of pure restless habit and started reading through vendor emails I had been ignoring for weeks. Confirmations addressed to me as the official contract holder. Venue booking, deposit paid, remaining balance $19,000. Catering, remaining balance $15,000. Decor and flowers, remaining balance $9,000. Photography and videography, remaining balance $6,000. I scrolled through each one slowly. My name, my card number, my signature scanned into every single PDF. Total deposits already paid by me, $2,500 gone. Total outstanding balance still due, $49,500. Combined with everything I had already spent, I was staring down a total of $52,000 tied to a wedding I had just been physically turned away from. The next morning, a voice note came in from Fiza, cheerful and completely oblivious. The wedding was honestly perfect. Everything looked amazing. Billow's family is so sweet. Anyway, thanks so much for handling all the vendor stuff. You're literally the best big sister. Love you. Let's catch up soon. Not one word about what had happened at the door. Not one word about the cousin comment. Not one moment of "I'm sorry." That was the moment something in me finally settled. Not with anger yet, but with total clarity. I picked up my phone and called the venue first. I explained calmly that I was the contract holder, that I had not attended the event, and that I was formally withdrawing my payment authorization, requesting the remaining balance be redirected to the actual hosts of the event, my parents in Lahore. No dispute, no explanation needed, just a clear, calm no. I made the same call to the caterer, then the decorator, then the photography team. 4 calls, barely 15 minutes total. I didn't raise my voice once. I then called my bank, canceled the card linked to all 4 contracts, and requested a brand new card with a new number, effectively cutting off $49,500 in charges from ever reaching my account again. 2 days later, my mother called, her voice sharp with panic. "What have you done? The venue is calling me, the caterer is calling me. I'm getting invoices with your name crossed out and mine written in. Do you understand how humiliating this is for me?" "I imagine it's about as humiliating as being called a cousin at your own daughter's wedding," I said. There was a long, heavy silence on the line before she hung up without another word. The fallout spread quickly through both families. Billow's parents were furious when they learned the truth. Not just that I existed, but that I had funded almost the entire wedding and been turned away at the door like a stranger. They refused outright to cover any part of the outstanding balance, since none of the contracts carried their name. Fiza and her new husband ended up taking out a personal loan to cover what was left, and their first real fight as a married couple happened less than a week into the marriage, over a sister neither of them had properly accounted for. A month later, my father, a man who almost never writes anything longer than a birthday message, sent me a long email for the first time in his life. He admitted he had stood there that day and said nothing, that he had been a coward, that he should have walked me inside himself. It wasn't a perfect apology, it didn't undo anything, but it was the first honest thing anyone in my family had said to me in years, and I read it more times than I'll admit. 6 months have passed since that day at the venue. I got promoted at work, and I started therapy, not because of the wedding itself, but because of the 32 years of patterns that led up to it. My mother still hasn't called, hasn't texted, hasn't sent a single message. I've heard through relatives that she refers to the whole thing as Sarah's tantrum. I don't hate my mother, and I've spent a lot of therapy sessions making sure that's true. But I've stopped pretending that the way she loved me didn't hurt. It did, deeply, for years, one signed contract and one swallowed silence at a time. I'm not sharing this story so that you'll hate anyone in it. I'm sharing it because maybe some of you are living a quieter version of the exact same thing. Always paying, always showing up, always absorbing the silence and calling it love. Because nobody ever taught you a different word for it. A boundary isn't punishment, and it isn't revenge. It's simply the moment you finally say, out loud or otherwise, "I am worth more than this." $52,000 was the price of my freedom, and I don't regret a single dollar of it.